The envelope arrived on the morning of Eleanor Whitmore's funeral, and the moment Jasmine Carter's fingers touched the cream-colored paper, she knew her silence was about to end. She stood in the narrow hallway of her modest Brooklyn apartment, her 23-year-old hands trembling as she turned the envelope over. The Whitmore family crest, a rearing lion beneath a crown, was embossed in gold on the back. After 5 years of hiding, of building a life in the shadows of their world, they had found her. Through the thin walls, she could hear her daughter singing in the next room. Maya, beautiful, innocent Maya, who had just turned 4 years old and had no idea that her entire existence was a secret that could destroy one of New York's most powerful families. Jasmine's phone buzzed. Another text from the number that had been calling her all week. "Doge, you need to come to the funeral. It's time. E.W. Ethan Whitmore. The man whose child she'd raised in silence. The man who'd walked away from her 5 years ago without ever knowing she was pregnant. The man whose mother had just died, taking with her the only person who knew Jasmine's secret, or so Jasmine had thought. She tore open the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a single card, printed on thick stock in elegant script. Eleanor Whitmore requests the presence of Ms. Jasmine Carter and guest at her memorial service. Saturday, November 18th, 2 p.m. The Whitmore Estate, Greenwich, Connecticut. What you seek will be revealed. What you hide can no longer remain hidden. The card slipped from Jasmine's fingers and fluttered to the floor. Eleanor Whitmore had died 3 days ago. This invitation had been prepared before her death, which meant Eleanor had known, had always known. "Mommy!" Maya's voice called out, sweet and high. "Can we go to the park today?" Jasmine pressed her palms against her eyes, fighting back tears. For 4 years, she'd built a safe little world for her daughter, a world without the Whitmore's billions, without their ruthless business empire, without their capacity to take everything she loved. But Eleanor Whitmore, even in death, was forcing her hand. She thought of Ethan, the way he'd looked at her that summer 5 years ago when she'd been just 18, working as a literacy tutor for a youth program in the Hamptons. He'd been 25, brilliant, tormented, the heir to a pharmaceutical fortune who spent his nights at charity galas and his days trying to prove he was more than his family's name. Their summer had been stolen moments between two worlds, secret meetings on the beach, conversations that lasted until dawn, the kind of love that felt infinite until reality came crashing in. His mother had ended it with surgical precision, a check for $50,000, a non-disclosure agreement, a car waiting to take Jasmine back to Brooklyn with instructions never to contact the family again. Jasmine had signed the papers, taken the money, left without telling him she was 8 weeks pregnant. If you're listening to this and want more stories like these, be sure to follow the channel so you don't miss the next chapter of these incredible journeys. Because sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones we've been too afraid to tell. Now, standing in her cramped hallway with Eleanor's posthumous summons in her hand, Jasmine understood with chilling clarity that she'd never really escaped at all. She picked up the card and read it again. What you seek will be revealed. What did that mean? What could Eleanor possibly have left for her? Her phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Ethan. It was a number she didn't recognize, followed by a text that made her blood run cold. She left you something in the will. If you don't come, you'll lose everything, and I mean everything, including her. Jasmine's knees buckled. She grabbed the wall for support, her heart hammering against her ribs, including her. Including Maya. Someone knew about Maya. Someone who had access to Eleanor's will, to the family's inner circle, to their power, and they were threatening her daughter. She stumbled to the window and looked down at the street below, suddenly paranoid that someone might be watching. A black sedan was parked across from her building. It had been there for 2 days. She'd noticed it but hadn't thought much about it. Now she wondered if she'd been a fool. "Mommy!" Maya appeared in the doorway, her dark curls bouncing, her hazel eyes, Ethan's eyes, looking up at her with concern. "Why are you crying?" Jasmine wiped her face quickly and forced a smile. "I'm not crying, baby. Just thinking about something." "About what?" "About how to keep you safe, about whether I should run or fight, about whether the man I loved 5 years ago will forgive me for the lie that's about to explode in both our faces." "About a trip we might take," Jasmine said instead. "Would you like to go on an adventure?" Maya's face lit up. "Like a princess adventure." Jasmine knelt down and pulled her daughter into her arms, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo, memorizing the feeling of her small body pressed against hers. "Yes," she whispered, "like a princess adventure." But as she held Maya, Jasmine's mind was racing. She had 48 hours to decide. Go to the funeral and risk everything being exposed, or run and spend the rest of her life looking over her shoulder, wondering when the Whitmores would come to take Maya away. She thought of Eleanor Whitmore, the cold, elegant matriarch who'd written her that check 5 years ago without a flicker of emotion. What game was she playing from beyond the grave? And more importantly, what did she know that Jasmine didn't? That night, after Maya was asleep, Jasmine did something she'd sworn she'd never do. She opened the locked drawer in her bedroom closet and pulled out the box she'd hidden there 5 years ago. Inside were the remnants of that summer. Photographs she'd taken secretly on her phone and printed. Ticket stubs from the one movie they'd seen together. A pressed flower from the bouquet he'd given her on their last night. And underneath it all, the letter she'd written him after she found out she was pregnant. The letter she'd never sent. She unfolded it with trembling hands and read words she'd written at 19, heartbroken and terrified. "Dear Ethan, I don't know how to tell you this, and I don't know if I ever will, but I need you to know that what we had was real, even if it couldn't last. I'm going to have your baby, and I'm going to love her enough for both of us. I'm not asking you for anything. I'm not going to trap you or ruin your life. I just wanted you to know that somewhere out there, you have a daughter who will carry the best parts of you in her. I hope someday you can forgive me for not being brave enough to tell you. I hope someday I can forgive myself. Love always, Jay." Tears streamed down Jasmine's face as she read. She'd been so young, so convinced she was doing the right thing by walking away. But now, looking at Maya sleeping in the next room, she wondered if she'd stolen something precious from both of them. Her phone lit up with another text. Still Ethan's number. "Jazz, I know it's you. Mom told me before she died. Please come. We need to talk." Jasmine's hands shook so badly she nearly dropped the phone. Eleanor had told him. Before she died, Eleanor had told Ethan about Maya, which meant he was going to be at that funeral, knowing she'd kept his daughter from him for 4 years, and there was no telling what he would do with that knowledge. But before Jasmine could even begin to process that devastating revelation, her phone buzzed with one more message, this time from an unknown number, and the words on the screen made her realize that Ethan finding out about Maya was the least of her problems. "Come to the funeral, or we release the photos to the press. The Whitmore heir's secret black daughter will be on every tabloid by Monday morning. Your choice. You have 48 hours. The train to Greenwich felt like a journey to her own execution. Jasmine sat with Maya in a private compartment, watching the landscape blur past the window, from the graffitied buildings of Brooklyn to the manicured estates of Connecticut. With every mile, she felt the weight of her secret growing heavier. Maya colored in a princess coloring book, humming contentedly, oblivious to the storm they were heading into. Jasmine's mind kept circling back to that summer 5 years ago, trying to pinpoint the exact moment when everything had started to go wrong. She'd been 18, freshly graduated from high school with a full scholarship to Columbia waiting for her in the fall. The literacy program in the Hamptons was supposed to be her summer job, teaching underprivileged kids to read while living in a cramped house with 5 other tutors. She'd never expected to meet someone like Ethan Whitmore. He'd shown up at the community centre one afternoon, claiming he wanted to volunteer. She'd seen through that immediately. Rich boys didn't volunteer in places like that. They wrote checks and attended galas and took photos for their Instagram feeds, but Ethan had been different. He'd stayed, week after week. He'd shown up to read with the kids, to help them with their homework, to listen to their stories. And somewhere between teaching a 6-year-old to sound out his first sentence and watching Ethan's genuine joy at the child's success, Jasmine had fallen in love. "He's not what you think," she'd told her best friend Keisha one night. "He's actually real." "Girl, he's a billionaire," Keisha had said. "They're never real. They're playing a game, and you're just a piece on the board." But Jasmine hadn't listened. She'd been young and in love, and convinced that what they had transcended money and class and race. She'd been wrong. The train jolted to a stop, pulling Jasmine from her memories. Greenwich Station, the last stop before the Whitmore estate. A driver was waiting for them, an older black woman in a crisp uniform who introduced herself as Mrs. Patterson, and looked at Jasmine with something that might have been sympathy. "Mrs. Whitmore arranged for your transportation," she said quietly as she loaded their bags into a sleek black town car. "She wanted to make sure you arrived safely. Did she arrange anything else?" Jasmine couldn't help asking. Mrs. Patterson's expression remained neutral. "She arranged quite a lot, miss. You'll see." The drive to the estate took 20 minutes through increasingly exclusive neighborhoods until they turned onto a private road marked only by a discreet brass plaque. Whitmore. Maya pressed her face to the window. "Mummy, is that a castle?" "No, baby," Jasmine said, though the 3-story stone mansion rising before them certainly looked like one. "That is just a very big house. Just a very big house where the people inside have enough money to make me disappear if they want to. Where I'm about to come face to face with the man I loved and lied to. Where my daughter's entire future will be decided by people who see us as problems to be solved." The car pulled up to the circular drive where dozens of luxury vehicles were already parked. Through the mullioned windows, Jasmine could see the funeral reception in full swing, hundreds of guests in black designer clothes, servers in white gloves passing champagne, a string quartet playing something mournful and expensive. "Mrs. Patterson," Jasmine said as the driver opened their door. "What was Eleanor Whitmore really like?" The older woman's expression softened slightly. "She was complicated, miss. But in the end, she tried to do right by the people she loved." She paused, even if her methods were unconventional. Before Jasmine could ask what that meant, a tall, silver-haired man in an impeccable suit appeared at the car door. "Ms. Carter," he said smoothly, "I'm Harrison Blackwell, the Whitmore family attorney. Mrs. Whitmore instructed me to escort you to a private room before the service. If you'll follow me." It wasn't a request. Jasmine took Maya's hand and followed the attorney through a side entrance, away from the crowds. They walked through hallways lined with oil paintings, generations of Whitmores staring down from the walls with cold, imperious expressions. "Where are we going?" Jasmine asked. "To Eleanor's private study," Blackwell said. "She recorded a video for you. She wanted you to see it before everything else." "Before what?" But Blackwell didn't answer. He opened a heavy oak door and ushered them into a wood-paneled study that smelled of old books and expensive perfume. A large screen had been set up on the mahogany desk. Blackwell pressed a button on a remote, then quietly excused himself, closing the door behind him with an ominous click. The screen flickered to life, and there she was, Eleanor Whitmore. Jasmine's breath caught. She'd only met the woman once, 5 years ago, but Eleanor looked remarkably different in this video. Thinner, older. The cancer that had killed her was already visible in the hollows of her cheeks, the shadows under her eyes, but her voice was still strong, still commanding. "Ms. Carter," Eleanor began, looking directly at the camera, "if you're watching this, then I'm dead, and you've come to my funeral despite having every reason to stay away. That takes courage. Or desperation, perhaps both." Jasmine's hands clenched into fists. "I imagine you're wondering why I invited you here," Eleanor continued. "Why, after paying you to leave my son alone 5 years ago, I would want you anywhere near my family." On the screen, Eleanor paused to take a sip of water, and Jasmine could see the slight tremor in her hand. "The answer is simple. I was wrong." The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. "I was wrong about you." "Wrong about what you and Ethan had? Wrong to interfere?" Eleanor's expression hardened. "But I was right about one thing. My family is dangerous. Not because we're cruel, though we can be, but because we have enemies, real ones. And those enemies would do anything to hurt us." Maya tugged on Jasmine's sleeve. "Mommy, who is that lady?" "Just someone I used to know, baby," Jasmine whispered, never taking her eyes off the screen. "I watch your movie for a minute, okay?" She handed Maya her iPad with trembling hands, then turned back to Eleanor's recorded confession. "I've known about Maya since she was born," Eleanor said, and Jasmine felt the air leave her lungs. "I've had investigators watching you both, making sure you were safe, making sure no one else found out." Tears streamed down Jasmine's face. All these years, she'd thought she was hiding, but Eleanor had been watching, protecting them from the shadows. "But I'm dying now," Eleanor continued, her voice cracking slightly, "and I can't protect you anymore, so I'm doing the next best thing. I'm bringing you back into the fold, whether you like it or not." The screen flickered, and Eleanor leaned forward, her expression intense. "In my will, I'm leaving you $20 million and a trust fund for Maya that will give her everything she needs for the rest of her life. But there's a condition." "Of course there is," Jasmine thought bitterly. "You have to tell Ethan the truth, today, at the funeral. And you have to let him be a father to Maya." Eleanor's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I know I'm asking you to risk everything, but my son deserves to know his daughter, and Maya deserves to know her father." The video paused, and Eleanor seemed to gather herself. "But I need to warn you about something," she said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "There are people in this family who will not be happy about Maya's existence. People who see her as a threat to their inheritance. My brother-in-law, Richard, and his son, Marcus, they've been circling like vultures since my diagnosis. If they find out about Maya before you secure your legal position, they will try to hurt you." Jasmine's blood ran cold. "That's why I've arranged for Blackwell to have all the documentation ready. DNA tests proving Ethan's paternity. Affidavits from witnesses who saw you together that summer. Everything you need to protect yourself legally." Eleanor leaned back in her chair, looking suddenly exhausted. "I know you must hate me," she said softly, "and you have every right to. I took away your choice 5 years ago. I'm taking it away again now. But I'm trying to make amends for the time I stole from both of you." The screen went dark for a moment. Then Eleanor appeared again, and this time she looked directly into the camera, as if she could see Jasmine sitting there. "One more thing," she said. "The photos, the ones someone has been threatening you with. I know about them too. They were taken by Marcus. He hired a private investigator to follow you, hoping to use Maya against Ethan somehow. I've been keeping him in check, but with me gone..." She shook her head. "You need to get ahead of this story. Control the narrative before Marcus does it for you." The video ended abruptly, leaving Jasmine staring at a blank screen, with her heart hammering and her mind reeling. $20 million. Legal protection, but at what cost? The door opened, and Harrison Blackwell stepped back in. "I know this is overwhelming, Ms. Carter, but Mrs. Whitmore was right. We need to move quickly. The will reading is tomorrow morning, and if Marcus Whitmore suspects what Eleanor has done, He'll try to contest it. What about Ethan? Jasmine's voice came out as a hoarse whisper. Does he know about the money? About Eleanor's plan? Blackwell's expression was unreadable. Mr. Whitmore knows his mother wanted to include you in her will. He doesn't know the specific terms yet. And he doesn't know about the threats from Marcus. Jasmine stood up on shaky legs, gathering Maya into her arms. I need to see him, before the service, before everything becomes public. That's not advisable. I don't care what's advisable, Jasmine snapped. I've hidden from this man for 5 years. I'm not going to ambush him at his mother's funeral with the news that he has a daughter. He deserves better than that. For the first time, Blackwell's professional mask cracked slightly, and something like respect flickered across his face. Very well, he said. I'll arrange a private meeting. But, Ms. Carter, you should know that Mr. Whitmore is not in a good state. His mother's death hit him very hard, and the knowledge that you've been keeping Maya from him for years has only made things worse. I know, Jasmine said quietly. That's why I have to face him. 20 minutes later, she found herself standing outside another door, this time on the 2nd floor of the mansion. Maya was safely ensconced in a guest room with Mrs. Patterson, watching cartoons and eating cookies, blissfully unaware of the confrontation about to unfold. Jasmine raised her hand to knock, then froze as she heard voices from inside, a woman's voice, sharp and angry. You're seriously going to let her waltz in here after 5 years? After she took your money and disappeared? After she kept your child from you? Charlotte, I don't want to hear this right now. Ethan's voice, deeper than she remembered, rough with grief and something else. Anger, pain. Well, you're going to hear it. The woman, Charlotte, shot back. I've been here for you through all of this. Through your mother's illness, through the company crisis, through everything, and now she shows up, and suddenly I'm supposed to just step aside? This isn't about you. The hell it isn't. We've been together for 3 years, Ethan. 3 years, and you're ready to throw that away for some girl you had a fling with when you were 25. Jasmine's stomach dropped. He'd moved on. Of course he had. What had she expected? That he'd been pining for her all these years? Jazz wasn't a fling, Ethan said quietly, dangerously. She was the only real thing in my life that summer, and I've spent 5 years trying to figure out why she left. Well, now you know. She was pregnant, and she took your mother's money, and she ran. She's just another gold digger, Ethan. Wake up. The sound of glass shattering made Jasmine jump. Get out, Charlotte. Now. Ethan. I said get out. Footsteps approached the door, and Jasmine barely had time to step back before it flew open and a stunning blonde woman stormed out. Charlotte stopped short when she saw Jasmine, her blue eyes going cold. You must be the ghost from the past, she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. How convenient. Eleanor's dead, and suddenly you remember Ethan exists. Charlotte. Ethan appeared in the doorway, and Jasmine's breath caught. He looked like hell. His dark hair was disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled, his hazel eyes red-rimmed and haunted. But he was still the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. Their eyes met, and for a moment the entire world fell away. Jazz, he breathed, and the way he said her name with such longing, such pain, broke something inside her. Hello, Ethan, she managed. We need to talk. Charlotte laughed harshly. Oh, this should be good. I'll just wait downstairs for when you come to your senses, darling. She brushed past Jasmine, deliberately bumping her shoulder. Enjoy your reunion, she hissed. It won't last. Then she was gone, leaving Jasmine and Ethan staring at each other across the threshold of the room where their entire world was about to change. And as Ethan stepped aside to let her in, his hand trembling slightly as it gripped the doorframe, Jasmine realized with terrible clarity that Eleanor's posthumous manipulation had worked. because the moment she crossed that threshold, there would be no going back. But what neither of them knew was that Marcus Whitmore was at that very moment in another wing of the mansion, reviewing the photos his investigator had taken of Jasmine and Maya over the past 4 years, and he was smiling. The room swallowed them in uncomfortable silence. Ethan closed the door behind Jasmine, then leaned against it as if he couldn't trust his legs to hold him. His guest suite was larger than her entire apartment, all dark wood, leather furniture, and windows overlooking the estate's sprawling gardens. "You kept her from me." His voice was flat, emotionless, which was somehow worse than anger. "For 4 years you let me walk around not knowing I had a daughter." Jasmine forced herself to meet his gaze. "Yes." "Why?" "Because your mother paid me to disappear, because I was 18 and terrified. Because I thought I was protecting you, because I was a coward, because I thought it was better for everyone," she said instead. "Your mother made it very clear that I didn't belong in your world." Ethan's laugh was bitter. "So instead of giving me a choice, you decided for me. You decided I didn't deserve to know. You had a life, a company to run, a future mapped out by people who expected you to marry someone like—" She gestured vaguely toward the door where Charlotte had exited. "Someone like her, not a teenager from Brooklyn who had nothing to offer you but problems." "Her name is Maya." Ethan's voice cracked. "My daughter's name is Maya, and I didn't even get to choose it. I didn't get to be there when she was born. I didn't get to hear her first word or see her first steps or—" He turned away abruptly, his shoulders shaking. Jasmine's own tears spilled over. I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Ethan. Sorry doesn't give me back 4 years." "No," she agreed quietly. "It doesn't." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Through the window, they could hear the murmur of the funeral reception below, hundreds of people paying their respects to Eleanor Whitmore, while her son and the mother of his secret child unraveled in the room above. "My mother told me a week before she died," Ethan finally said, still facing away from her. She sat me down and said, "I need to tell you something that's going to change your life." And then she told me about Maya." He turned back to Jasmine, and the anguish in his eyes nearly destroyed her. "Do you know what the worst part was? She'd known for years. She'd been watching you, protecting you, making sure Maya was safe, and she never told me." "She thought she was protecting you too," Jasmine said. "From what? From being a father? From having a family?" Ethan shook his head. "She was protecting her legacy, making sure I didn't derail my life with an inconvenient teenage girlfriend and a baby that didn't fit into her plans. Maybe, but she changed her mind. She brought me here. She left us money. I don't give a damn about the money." Ethan exploded, and Jasmine flinched. "I don't care about the trust fund or the inheritance or any of it. I care about the fact that I have a 4-year-old daughter I've never met, a little girl who doesn't even know I exist." "She knows you exist," Jasmine said softly. "I've told her about you. She knows she has a father who would have loved her if he'd known about her." Ethan's expression crumbled. "Would have loved her? Jazz, I already love her. I've loved her since the moment my mother told me about her. I just haven't had the chance to show her." He moved toward Jasmine, and she saw the boy she'd fallen in love with beneath the grief and anger, the one who'd read to children in that community center, who'd looked at her like she was the only real thing in his gilded world. "I need to meet her," he said. "Today, now, before the funeral, before the will reading, before whatever else my mother has orchestrated from beyond the grave. I need to see my daughter." Jasmine nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat, but before she could respond, the door burst open without warning. A man strode in, early 50s, graying hair, expensive suit, and eyes that immediately assessed and dismissed Jasmine in one cold glance. "Ethan," he said with false warmth, "I've been looking for you. There are some business associates downstairs who—" He stopped short, noticing Jasmine for the first time. "Oh, am I interrupting?" "Yes, Marcus," Ethan said tightly. "You are. Marcus, the Uncle Eleanor had warned her about my apologies." Marcus's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I don't believe we've met. Marcus Whitmore, Ethan's uncle." He extended his hand to Jasmine. She didn't take it. "Jasmine Carter." Something flickered across Marcus's face. Recognition, calculation, and something darker. "Ah, the literacy tutor from that summer program. I remember now. Eleanor mentioned you might attend the service." The way he said it made Jasmine's skin crawl. "Marcus, get out," Ethan said. Of course, I just wanted to offer my congratulations." Marcus's smile widened. "On your daughter, Maya, isn't it? Such a beautiful name." The room went deadly silent. "How did you—" Ethan started. "How did I know?" Marcus pulled out his phone and swiped through several images, then turned the screen toward them. "Because unlike my dear departed sister-in-law, I believe in being prepared." Jasmine's blood turned to ice. The photos showed her and Maya at the park, at the grocery store, at Maya's preschool. Dozens of them, taken over months, maybe years. "You've been stalking us," she breathed. "Stalking is such an ugly word," Marcus said smoothly. "I prefer due diligence. You see, when my brother's wife started making unusual financial arrangements in her final months, I became curious. And when I discovered she was planning to leave a substantial portion of the Whitmore estate to a woman my nephew had a brief fling with 5 years ago, I became very curious indeed." Ethan moved between Marcus and Jasmine, his posture protective, dangerous. "Whatever you're planning, Marcus, don't." "Planning? I'm not planning anything." Marcus's expression turned ugly. "But I thought you should know that I'm contesting Eleanor's will. A woman who gave away $20 million to a gold digger and her illegitimate child clearly wasn't of sound mind in her final days." "Maya is my daughter," Ethan said through clenched teeth. "Is she? Where's the DNA test? Where's the birth certificate with your name on it?" Marcus shrugged. "For all we know, Mrs. Carter here has been running a long con. Sleep with a billionaire's son, get pregnant by anyone, then come back years later claiming the child is his. It's a classic scheme." "You son of a—" Ethan lunged forward, but Jasmine grabbed his arm. "Don't," she said urgently. "He's baiting you." "Smart girl," Marcus said. "Maybe you're not just a gold digger after all." He pocketed his phone. "Here's what's going to happen. The will reading is tomorrow at 10 a.m. I'm going to contest every provision Eleanor made in your favor, and unless you can prove paternity, which, given that Ethan didn't even know the child existed until last week, seems unlikely, you're going to walk away with nothing." "I don't care about the money," Jasmine said coldly. "Everyone cares about the money, dear." Marcus moved toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and one more thing. If you try to go public with this story, if you breathe a word to the press about Maya being Ethan's daughter, I'll bury you. I have lawyers who specialize in destroying people like you. By the time they're done, you'll be lucky if you keep custody of your own child, let alone get a cent from this family." He left, closing the door softly behind him, and the quiet click was more terrifying than if he'd slammed it. Jasmine's legs gave out. She sank onto the leather couch, her entire body shaking. Ethan knelt in front of her, taking her hands in his. "Look at me! Jazz, look at me!" She raised her tear-stained face to his. "I'm not going to let him hurt you," Ethan said fiercely. "Or Maya. I don't care what it takes. I don't care if I have to burn my entire inheritance to the ground. You're under my protection now." "You can't protect us from your own family," Jasmine whispered. "Watch me." But even as Ethan said the words, even as he pulled Jasmine into his arms for the first time in 5 years, they both knew the truth. The funeral service was about to begin. Tomorrow, Eleanor's will would be read, and the full extent of her posthumous manipulations would be revealed. And Marcus Whitmore, a man who saw his nephew's secret daughter as nothing more than an obstacle to his own inheritance, was already 3 steps ahead of them. As Ethan held Jasmine, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair, feeling the tremble of her body against his, he made a silent vow. His mother had brought Jazz and Maya back into his life, and he would die before he let anyone take them away again. But what Ethan didn't know, what none of them knew yet, was that Eleanor Whitmore's final gift wasn't the money she'd left in her will. It was the truth she'd hidden in her diary. A truth that would prove Marcus Whitmore had far more to lose than any of them realized. And that truth was about to be revealed in the most public, devastating way possible. The funeral service was a perfectly choreographed performance of grief. Jasmine sat in the back row of the estate's private chapel, Maya on her lap, watching as New York's elite paid tribute to Eleanor Whitmore. Senators, CEOs, socialites, they all stood to share carefully crafted memories of a woman they'd admired, feared, and ultimately served. But Jasmine barely heard the words. Her eyes were locked on Ethan, sitting in the front row between Charlotte and Marcus, his broad shoulders rigid with tension. "Mommy, why is everyone sad?" Maya whispered. "Because someone they loved died, baby," Jasmine said softly, kissing the top of her daughter's head. "Or do you like when my goldfish died?" "Sort of like that, yes." Maya considered this. "Can we get ice cream after? Ice cream makes me feel better when I'm sad." Despite everything, Jasmine smiled. "Yeah, baby, we can get ice cream." The service dragged on. A priest spoke about eternal rest. A string quartet played something Jasmine didn't recognize, but that sounded expensive. And then, finally, Ethan rose to give the eulogy. He looked like he might shatter. My mother," he began, his voice rough, "was not an easy woman to love." A ripple went through the crowd. This wasn't the script they'd expected. She was demanding, controlling, and absolutely convinced that she knew what was best for everyone around her. Ethan's hands gripped the podium. She ran her family like she ran Whitmore Pharmaceuticals, with an iron fist and a 20-year plan. Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his seat. But she was also brilliant and loyal, and in her own complicated way, she loved fiercely. Ethan's voice cracked. She spent her last months trying to fix the mistakes she'd made, trying to make amends for the pain she'd caused. And I think... He looked out over the crowd, his eyes finding Jasmine in the back row. "I think she succeeded." The connection between them was electric, visible, impossible to hide. Charlotte noticed. Her face went white with fury. "Then my mother taught me that family is everything," Ethan continued, "that blood matters, that we protect our own, no matter what." His gaze swept over Marcus. "She also taught me that sometimes the greatest threats come from inside the family, not outside." Now people were definitely starting to whisper, "So I'm standing here today, at her funeral, and I'm making her a promise." Ethan's voice grew stronger. "I promise to honor her memory by protecting the people she loved, by making the hard choices she made, and by refusing to let anyone—" He stared directly at Marcus. "Anyone. Destroy what she built." The whispers grew louder. "Mom, I'm sorry for the mistakes I've made, for the time I wasted, for not being brave enough to fight for what mattered." Tears streamed down Ethan's face. "But I'm fighting now. I promise you I'm fighting now." He stepped away from the podium and walked straight past his assigned seat, past Charlotte's shocked face, past Marcus's furious glare, all the way to the back of the chapel where Jasmine sat frozen. The entire room went silent. Ethan knelt down in front of Maya, and for the first time, father and daughter looked at each other. Maya's hazel eyes, so like his own, went wide. "Yeah, Mommy, who is this?" Jasmine's throat was so tight she could barely speak. "Maya, baby, this is your daddy." Time stopped. Maya studied Ethan with the intense scrutiny only a 4-year-old could muster. She tilted her head, reached out, and touched his face tentatively. "You're really my daddy?" she asked in her small voice. "Yes," Ethan whispered, his voice breaking. "I'm really your daddy. And I'm so sorry it took me this long to find you. Did you get lost?" Ethan let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "Yeah, princess, I got really lost. But I'm here now. If that's okay with you." Maya considered this for a moment, then threw her small arms around his neck. The chapel erupted. Cameras that shouldn't have been there began flashing. Guests pulled out their phones. The whispers turned into full conversations, speculation running wild. And in the front row, Marcus Whitmore stood up, his face purple with rage. "This is unconscionable," he shouted. "At his own mother's funeral. This woman is clearly manipulating him, and I won't stand for—" "Sit down, Marcus." The voice came from the back of the room, sharp and commanding. Harrison Blackwell strode forward, holding a leather-bound book. "But what is the meaning of this?" Marcus demanded. "This," Blackwell said, holding up the book, "is Eleanor Whitmore's private diary. She gave it to me 3 days before she died, with explicit instructions to read relevant passages if anyone," he looked pointedly at Marcus, "attempted to contest her will or interfere with her final wishes." Jasmine felt Ethan's hand find hers. They stood together, Maya between them, as Blackwell opened the diary. "Eleanor Whitmore kept meticulous records," the attorney continued, "records of conversations, business dealings, and, most relevantly, family secrets." He turned to a marked page. "Shall I read the entry from June 15th, 2018? Marcus's face went from purple to white. "That's private. You have no right—" "On the contrary, Mrs. Whitmore specifically authorized me to share these entries if necessary to protect her granddaughter." Blackwell's smile was cold. "Oh, and since you've just publicly questioned Maya's legitimacy, I'd say it's very necessary." He began to read. "Marcus came to see me today. He's desperate. The clinical trial for his Alzheimer's drug is failing, and the board wants to pull funding. He begged me to use company resources to falsify the data, to make it look like the drug works, so he can secure FDA approval and save his reputation." The chapel went deathly silent. "And John, I refused, of course," Blackwell continued. "The Whitmore name stands for integrity, whatever our other faults. But Marcus threatened me, said if I didn't help him, he'd expose some family secret that would destroy us. I laughed in his face. I told him I'd weathered worse scandals than anything he could manufacture." Marcus lunged forward, but 2 security guards appeared from nowhere and blocked his path. "But I'm recording this," Blackwell read on, "because I know Marcus. He's not going to let this go. And if something happens to me, if I die under suspicious circumstances, or if my will is contested, I want the world to know what kind of man he really is." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "There's more," Blackwell said, "much more. Details of financial improprieties, bribes paid to foreign officials, unsafe practices buried in subsidiary companies." He closed the diary with a snap. "Mrs. Whitmore documented everything, and she left instructions that if her will was contested, all of it goes to the FBI, the SEC, and every major newspaper in the country." Marcus stood frozen, trapped between the security guards and the ruins of his reputation. "Well, so here's what's going to happen," Blackwell said calmly. "You're going to accept Eleanor's will without contest. You're going to keep your mouth shut about Ethan's daughter, and in exchange, these diaries stay sealed." He paused. "For now." "You're bluffing," Marcus said, but his voice was weak. "Am I?" Blackwell pulled out his phone and showed Marcus something on the screen. Whatever it was made Marcus go even paler. "Those are the FBI agents currently sitting in my office, ready to open an investigation the moment I give the word. Your choice." The silence stretched out like a tightrope. Finally, Marcus stepped back. "You'll regret this," he said to Ethan. "All of you." "I doubt it," Ethan replied, pulling Jasmine and Maya closer. I've spent 5 years regretting the wrong things. I'm done with regret. Marcus turned and stormed out of the chapel, with Charlotte hurrying after him like a rat fleeing a sinking ship. As the chapel slowly emptied, filled with gossip and speculation, Jasmine found herself alone with Ethan and Maya and the ghost of the woman who'd orchestrated it all. Your mother, Jasmine said quietly, looking at Eleanor's casket draped in white roses, was terrifying. Yeah, Ethan agreed. She really was. But she loved you. Yeah, his voice cracked. She did. Maya tugged on both their hands. Can we go home now? I'm hungry. Ethan and Jasmine looked at each other, and the weight of that simple question hung between them. Home. Where was home now? Her tiny Brooklyn apartment, his penthouse in Manhattan, the Whitmore estate that came with his inheritance. Or something new, something they'd have to build together from the ruins of 5 years apart. Yeah, princess, Ethan said, lifting Maya into his arms for the first time. She went willingly, resting her head on his shoulder as if she'd been doing it her whole life. Let's go home. But as they walked out of the chapel together, Jasmine couldn't shake the feeling that Eleanor's final manipulation wasn't complete yet. Because the next morning, when they gathered in Blackwell's office for the will reading, they would discover that Eleanor had left them more than money, more than protection, more than threats against her enemies. She'd left them a choice, and that choice would force them to decide once and for all whether they were brave enough to build a life together, or whether 5 years apart had broken something that couldn't be fixed. The morning of the will reading arrived too quickly. Jasmine woke in one of the Whitmore estate's guest rooms, disoriented for a moment before she remembered where she was. Through the adjoining door, she could hear Maya's soft breathing. Her daughter had fallen asleep, watching cartoons on Ethan's lap around midnight, and he'd carried her to bed with such tenderness it had broken Jasmine's heart all over again. She'd given him 4 years, 4 years of bedtime stories and skinned knees and first words. 4 years he could never get back. Her phone buzzed, a text from Keisha. Girl, you're everywhere. TMZ, page 6, CNN, billionaire's secret love child revealed at mother's funeral. You okay? Jasmine groaned and opened her news app. Sure enough, photos from yesterday's funeral were splashed across every gossip site. There she was, with Ethan and Maya, the three of them looking like a family despite the chaos around them. The comments section was predictably brutal. Gold digger, opportunist, baby trapper. But mixed in were other voices, women who saw something different in the photos, women who recognized the fear and hope and exhausted love in Jasmine's eyes. You're up early. She turned to find Ethan in the doorway, 2 coffee mugs in his hands. He looked like he hadn't slept, but there was something different in his expression, something settled. Couldn't sleep, she admitted, taking the coffee he offered. Their fingers brushed, and the electricity was still there after all these years. Me neither. He sat down on the window seat, staring out at the sunrise painting the estate's gardens gold. I keep thinking about all the moments I missed. Her first word, her first steps, the first time she called someone Mommy. Ethan, I'm not saying it to make you feel guilty, he interrupted. I'm just processing, grieving for the time I lost. He turned to look at her. But I'm also grateful, because you raised an incredible little girl, Jazz. She's smart and funny and kind. You did that alone, and I don't know if I ever properly thanked you. Jasmine's vision blurred with tears. You don't have to thank me. She's my daughter. I would do anything for her. Our daughter, Ethan corrected gently. If you'll let me be her father, really be her father, not just the name on a DNA test. I want that, Jasmine whispered. God, I want that so much, but I'm scared, Ethan. Your world is so different from mine. What if I can't protect her from what? From having money? From having 2 parents who love her? Ethan moved to sit beside her on the bed, close enough that she could feel his warmth. Or from having a family that includes people like Marcus, who see her as a threat. All of it, Jasmine admitted. Then we protect her together. He took her hand, lacing their fingers together in a gesture that felt both new and achingly familiar. You don't have to do this alone anymore, Jazz. You never should have had to. Before she could respond, Maya's voice called out from the next room. Mommy, I had a dream about the castle. Coming, baby, Jasmine called back, then looked at Ethan. You want to? Yes, he said immediately, standing up and pulling her with him. God, yes. They found Maya sitting up in the enormous four-poster bed, her curls wild around her face, clutching the stuffed elephant Ethan had given her last night. Tell me about your dream, Ethan said, sitting on the edge of the bed. I dreamed I was a princess, Maya said seriously, and I lived in this castle with my mommy and my daddy, and we were a family, and nobody was ever sad. The simplicity of it, the pure, uncomplicated hope, made both adults go silent. That's a really good dream, princess, Ethan finally managed, his voice thick. Can we make it real? Maya asked. And there it was. The question that had been hovering in the air since yesterday, the question they'd all been dancing around. Jasmine looked at Ethan and found him already looking at her. I don't know, she said honestly, but we can try. 3 hours later, they sat in Harrison Blackwell's office, waiting for the will reading to begin. The room was large and intimidating, all dark wood and law books, with a conference table that could seat 20 people. But today, there were only 5 of them. Jasmine, Ethan, Maya, colouring contentedly in a corner, Blackwell, and a court-appointed witness. Marcus had been officially barred from contesting the will, courtesy of Eleanor's diaries and some very pointed threats from federal investigators. The story had leaked to the press overnight. Whitmore executive under investigation for fraud, and Marcus was currently on a plane to the Cayman Islands, where extradition would be complicated. Before we begin, Blackwell said, settling his reading glasses on his nose, I want you to understand that Eleanor Whitmore's will is unconventional. What does that mean? Jasmine asked. It means she didn't just leave you money. She left you choices. Blackwell opened a thick legal folder. Ms. Carter, you are the primary beneficiary of a trust fund worth $20 million to be released to you immediately. Additionally, Maya is the beneficiary of a separate trust worth $50 million to be held until she turns 18. $70 million. The number was so absurd that Jasmine couldn't even process it. However, Blackwell continued, there are conditions. Of course there are, Jasmine thought. Eleanor required that you and Ethan undergo court-ordered mediation to establish a formal custody arrangement for Maya. She also required that Maya be given the Whitmore surname legally, with your permission. He looked at Jasmine over his glasses. Do you consent to these terms? Jasmine looked at Maya, then at Ethan. And just what happens if I say no? The money goes to charity, Blackwell said simply. Eleanor was very clear. She wanted to provide for you and Maya, but only if you were willing to give Ethan a real chance to be a father. So it's blackmail, Jasmine said flatly. It's a mother trying to fix her mistakes, Ethan countered. Jazz, you don't have to take the money. I'll still be in Maya's life. We'll work out custody on our own. But my mother wanted to make sure you were financially secure, that Maya would have everything she needed. She was trying to help. By forcing me into an arrangement. By giving you options you wouldn't have had otherwise. Ethan leaned forward. Look, I know my mother was manipulative, but she was right about one thing. Maya deserves to have both her parents. And we deserve a chance to figure out what that looks like. Jasmine closed her eyes, thinking about the last 5 years, the struggle to pay rent, to afford daycare, to give Maya the life she deserved, the constant fear that somehow the Whitmores would find her and take Maya away. Eleanor was offering her security, safety, a future where Maya would never want for anything. But at what cost? "Mr. Blackwell," she said slowly, "what happens to Ethan in the will?" The attorney's expression softened. "Mr. Whitmore inherits the majority of the Whitmore estate, including controlling interest in Whitmore Pharmaceuticals, valued at approximately $8.7 billion. He also inherits this estate and all associated properties. So he doesn't need my $20 million. "No, Ms. Carter, he doesn't." Jasmine turned to Ethan. "Then I have a proposal." He raised his eyebrows. "I'm listening. I'll agree to Eleanor's terms. Custody mediation, giving Maya your surname, all of it." She took a deep breath. "But I don't want the $20 million. Put it in a foundation, for literacy programs, for kids like I was, kids who need tutors, books, a chance to escape poverty through education." Ethan stared at her like she'd grown a second head. "Jazz, that's $20 million. It's your security, Maya's future. Maya's future is already secured with her trust fund, and my security—" She reached out and took his hand. "My security comes from knowing I can support myself, from having my skills and my education and my ability to work. I don't want to be the girl who took your mother's money and ran. I want to be the woman who used that money to help other girls who are exactly where I was 5 years ago." The silence in the room was absolute. Then Ethan did something that surprised her completely. He laughed. "God, I forgot," he said, pulling her into his arms. "I forgot how fucking extraordinary you are." "Language," Jasmine said automatically, glancing at Maya, but she was smiling through her tears. "The foundation idea is brilliant," Ethan continued. "We'll call it the Eleanor Whitmore Literacy Foundation." She'd have hated that. Her name attached to something actually helpful instead of just profitable, but that makes it even better. Blackwell cleared his throat. "Mr. Whitmore, there's one more thing in your mother's will. A letter. She asked that it be read aloud if Miss Carter agreed to the custody arrangement." He pulled out a cream-colored envelope with Eleanor's handwriting on the front. "For Ethan and Jasmine." Ethan opened it with trembling hands and began to read aloud. "My dear son and his love. If you're reading this, then Jasmine has proven me right. She's not after our money. She never was. She's simply a young woman who got caught in our family's crossfire and had the courage to survive it. Ethan, I wronged you both 5 years ago. I was so focused on protecting you from what I saw as a mistake that I robbed you of the greatest gift life can offer, the chance to be a father to your child, to love someone without calculation or condition. Jasmine, I wronged you even more. I treated you like a problem to be solved, rather than a person to be respected. I offered you money instead of support, an NDA instead of honesty, and you took it because you were 18 and scared and convinced you were doing what was best for everyone. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I am asking you both to build something better than what I destroyed, to give Maya a family that isn't broken by pride and prejudice and the weight of generational wealth. The money doesn't matter. The company doesn't matter. The Whitmore name doesn't matter. What matters is love. Real love. The kind that survives mistakes and secrets and 5 years apart. You had that once. I hope, and for Maya's sake and for your own, that you can find it again. With regret and hope, Eleanor. By the time Ethan finished reading, they were both crying openly. She really did change her mind, Jasmine whispered. Yeah, Ethan agreed. She did. They sat in silence for a moment, absorbing Eleanor's final words, before Blackwell spoke up. There's one last thing, the attorney said. Mrs. Whitmore left a sealed envelope for Maya to be opened on her 18th birthday. She wouldn't tell me what was in it, but she said it contained the truth about everything, the full story of how her parents met, how they fell in love, and how she brought them back together. He placed a thick cream envelope on the table, sealed with red wax and stamped with the Whitmore crest. "Guard this carefully," Blackwell said. Mrs. Whitmore seemed to think it was the most important thing she was leaving behind. Jasmine took the envelope, feeling the weight of it in her hands. 14 years from now, Maya would open this and learn the full, complicated truth about her grandmother's final manipulations. But for now, all Maya knew was that she had a mommy and a daddy who loved her, and a future full of possibilities. "So," Ethan said, turning to Jasmine, "custody mediation. The Whitmore surname, a literacy foundation in my mother's name. What else?" Jasmine took a deep breath. "Dinner, tonight, just the three of us. Not in some fancy restaurant or at this estate. Somewhere normal, somewhere we can figure out if we're doing this because your mother arranged it or because we actually want to." Ethan smiled, really smiled, for the first time since his mother's death. "I know a place," he said. "Best pizza in Brooklyn. Been going there since I was a kid." "You in Brooklyn?" "My mother dragged me to board meetings there when I was young. I'd sneak out and get pizza." His smile turned mischievous. "I was kind of a rebellious teenager. Somehow, I'm not surprised." "Pizza!" Maya announced from her corner. "I love pizza!" And just like that, the weight of the moment lifted. They weren't a billionaire heir and a struggling single mother anymore. They weren't heirs to a dynasty or victims of manipulation. They were just two people who'd loved each other once, trying to figure out if they could love each other again, for their daughter, for themselves, for the future Eleanor had bought them with her guilt and her money and her posthumous redemption. 6 months later, the Eleanor Whitmore Literacy Foundation opened its doors on a warm spring morning in Harlem. Jasmine stood in the center of the bright, airy space, all floor-to-ceiling windows and colorful murals painted by local artists, and felt something close to peace settle in her chest. "Mummy, look!" Maya called out from the reading corner, where she was helping younger children pick out books. "I'm teaching them like you taught me." "That's beautiful, baby," Jasmine called back. Arms wrapped around her from behind, and she leaned back into Ethan's embrace without thinking. It had become natural over the past 6 months, this easy intimacy, this gradual rebuilding of trust. They'd taken it slow. Dinner dates with Maya, weekend visits where Ethan learned to braid hair and read bedtime stories, therapy sessions where they'd unpacked 5 years of hurt and miscommunication, and slowly, carefully, they'd fallen in love again. Not the desperate, stolen love of that summer 5 years ago. Something deeper, more real, built on honesty and shared purpose, and the tiny human being who'd inherited the best parts of both of them. "She's amazing," Ethan murmured against her hair. "Just like her mother." "She's stubborn and dramatic," Jasmine countered. "Just like her father." "Can't imagine where she gets that." Jasmine turned in his arms, looking up at him. "Your mother would be proud." "You know that, right?" "Would she?" Ethan's expression was complicated. "I still don't know if what she did was love or manipulation. Maybe it was both. Maybe that's what love looks like in your family. Messy and controlling and ultimately well-intentioned." "Our family," Ethan corrected. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, and Jasmine's heart stopped. "Because I'm hoping you'll officially agree to be part of it." "Ethan, I know we said we'd take it slow. I know it's only been 6 months, but Jazz, I lost 5 years with you. I don't want to waste another day pretending we're not building toward this." He opened the box, revealing a simple diamond ring, nothing ostentatious, nothing that screamed Whitmore wealth. Just a beautiful ring for the woman he loved. "Marry me," he said. "Not because my mother arranged it. Not because of Maya or the foundation or the money. Marry me because I love you, because I've loved you since that summer 5 years ago when you called me out for being a trust fund baby playing at charity work." Jasmine laughed through her tears. "I never said that." You absolutely did. You said, if you're here to feel good about yourself, save everyone time and write a check instead. I was 18 and stupid. You were 18 and brilliant. And you're still brilliant. And I'm still that guy who's desperately in love with you. He took her hand. So what do you say? Will you marry me? Around them, the foundation's opening day celebration continued. Kids laughing, tutors working, families discovering the free programs Eleanor's money had funded. But in that moment, it was just the two of them, and the question hanging in the air. Jasmine thought about the girl she'd been 5 years ago, scared, pregnant, convinced she was doing the right thing by walking away. She thought about Eleanor Whitmore, the complicated woman who'd tried to fix her mistakes from beyond the grave. She thought about Marcus and the threats that had turned to dust, about Charlotte and her fury that had faded into irrelevance, about all the people who'd thought she was just a gold digger looking for a payday. And then she looked at Ethan, really looked at him, and saw not the billionaire heir or the pharmaceutical dynasty or any of the things that had once seemed so insurmountable. She saw the man who'd spent 6 months learning to French braid Maya's hair, who'd shown up at her apartment at 2 a.m. when Maya had the flu and stayed up all night helping her hold their daughter while she threw up, who'd cried in therapy when he talked about the years he'd missed, who'd stood beside her at every foundation meeting, every legal proceeding, every moment when the weight of his world had threatened to crush her. She saw her partner, her equal, her love. Yes, she said simply. Yes, I'll marry you. Ethan's whoop of joy startled half the children in the room. He picked her up and spun her around, kissing her thoroughly while someone in the background started clapping. "Daddy!" Maya came running over. "Now what's happening?" Ethan set Jasmine down and scooped Maya up. "Your mommy just agreed to marry me, which means we're going to be a real family. Forever." Maya's eyes went wide. "Forever, ever. Forever, ever," Ethan confirmed. "Like in the fairy tales." Jasmine joined them, wrapping her arms around both of her people. "Better than the fairy tales, baby, because this is real." And it was. Real and messy and complicated, and built on a foundation of mistakes and redemptions, and Eleanor Whitmore's final, desperate attempt to make things right. As the celebration continued around them, as photographers captured the moment for the Foundation's website, as Maya chattered about being a flower girl at the wedding, Jasmine felt something she hadn't felt in 5 years. Hope. Not the desperate hope of a teenager trying to survive, but the solid, steady hope of a woman who'd fought for her family and won. Eleanor's sealed letter to Maya sat in a safe deposit box, waiting for its moment. But Jasmine thought she already knew what it would say. Sometimes love requires manipulation. Sometimes protection means control. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is forcing them to face the truth they've been running from. And in the end, maybe that was exactly what Eleanor had done. She'd forced Ethan to face the fact that he was a father, forced Jasmine to face the fact that running wasn't the same as protecting, forced them both to decide whether their love was strong enough to survive the truth. It was. And in that truth, they'd found something Eleanor Whitmore never had in her own life, a love that wasn't about power or control or dynasty. Just love. Pure, complicated, hard-won, absolutely real love. The kind worth waiting 5 years for. The kind worth fighting for. The kind worth building a future on. And as Jasmine stood in the literacy foundation that bore Eleanor's name, surrounded by the family she'd fought so hard to protect, and the man she'd never stopped loving, she realized something profound. Sometimes the greatest stories aren't the ones we plan. They're the ones that find us, in stolen summers and secret children and posthumous letters that change everything. They're the stories we tell in silence until someone forces us to speak them aloud. They're the stories that start with a lie and end with the truth. And those stories, those are the ones worth remembering.